Contrary to what the entire Democrat Party believes, this is a Christian nation. And in Christian nations, we believe in the power of prayer. We also believe in facing evil and confronting it and defeating it. There's another element of yesterday's attack, specifically relating to the aftermath of the shooting, that needs to be discussed. If you currently have any doubt as to the level of anti-Catholic and anti-Christian disdain that's held by the corporate press and Democrat activists and politicians, this is the moment to disabuse yourself of those notions. These people despise believers in Jesus Christ. They see the deaths of Christians, including children, as an opportunity to gloat, to mock, and to assert their own very misguided and pathological sense of superiority. You cannot understand trans ideology without recognizing that it's an explicitly anti-Christian ideology. And yesterday, the supporters of this ideology all but admitted that. And we'll start with the Minneapolis Mayor Jacob Frey. We played part of his press conference earlier, the portion where he insisted that transgenderism had nothing to do with the massacre. But as he continued, Frey went further. He also stated very directly that prayer is not an appropriate response to the killings of children, because after all, the children in the church were praying when the trans psychopath shot them to death. And yet, despite the fact that they were praying, they were killed. And therefore, don't talk about prayer anymore. That's actually what he said. Watch.
Those families are suffering immense pain right now. Think of this as if it were your own. Every one of us needs to be wrapping our arms around these families, giving them every ounce that we can muster. These were Minneapolis families. These were American families. And the amount of pain that they are suffering right now is extraordinary. And don't just say this is about thoughts and prayers right now. These kids were literally praying. It was the first week of school. They were in a church. These are kids that should be learning with their friends. They should be playing on the playground. They should be able to go to school or church in peace without the fear or risk of violence, and their parents should have the same kind of assurance. These are the sort of basic assurances that every family should have, every step of the day, regardless of where they are in our country.
Now, there are two possibilities here. The first possibility is that Jacob Frey is under the impression that Christians pray in order to generate some kind of force field around themselves, rendering them impervious to any form of harm. Maybe he genuinely believes that. Now that two children are dead and many more were seriously wounded, it's a great opportunity to point out that, in fact, prayer does not make you immune to bullets. The other possibility, which is obviously what actually happened here, is that Jacob Frey, number one, realizes that that's not what Christians actually believe. No Christian thinks that just because you pray that you're not going to be potentially the victim of violence. So Jacob Frey is in reality a godless communist who will take advantage of any perceived opportunity, no matter how ghoulish it may be, to denigrate Christians and their faith. Even if it means mocking children who were just killed in a church, which is what he was doing. He's actually mocking the victims. The killer himself, one of his wrote on one of his manifesto or whatever, one of his videos, where's your God now? And that's basically what Jacob Frey was saying. He was echoing the killer himself. And he'll dance with the local Somali horde. He'll weep at the grave of St. George Floyd and pretend to revere Islamic customs. But when it comes to Christians, he wants you to know that, in his view, prayer is completely pointless and embarrassing. It's just going to make you a bigger target for these psychopathic child killers that the Democrats deliberately incite at every opportunity. So why do it? That's Jacob Frey's position. He won't say a word about the domestic terror threat that's obviously posed by trans ideology, but he'll happily tell you to stop trying to communicate with God because he doesn't think God exists. And that's really what he believes. And it's not an understatement to say that the entire Democrat Party believes this. They all lined up one by one to communicate the exact same message yesterday. Here's Joe Biden's former spokesperson, Jen Psaki, quote, "Prayer is not freaking enough. Prayer does not end school shootings. Prayers do not make parents feel safer sending their kids to school. Prayer does not bring those kids back. Enough with the thoughts and prayers." Psaki then had this meltdown on her show, which nobody watches, but they keep it on the air anyway. But we can see the clips anyway. And here it is. Watch.
And all they should be hoping to do is have someone to sit with at lunch or someone to play with on the playground. And they should be waiting to hear an update when they get home. And that is not what these parents at the school experienced today. Sorry, this is a tough one. Having your child killed while they are sitting in a pew for a morning prayer service is not what any parent should have to worry about. And I have felt a mixture of anger and a lot of anger and emotional exhaustion about this today, as I'm sure many of you have, because we have been here so many times. And yet again, like clockwork, half of the politicians in our country have little more to offer than thoughts and prayers. That is all they are offering. Join all of us in praying for the victims, was Vice President J.D. Vance's response today. That's what he said. That's it. Please join me in praying for everyone involved, Trump wrote. We have seen this play out over and over again. There is a shooting, then come the thoughts and prayers, and then comes the attempt to shift the focus. This is what always happens. You're going to start seeing narratives. You're already seeing them. They're already out there about how the shooter was trans. You're going to see narratives about how the shooter appeared to be anti-Trump and anti-Semitic.
She's explicitly attacking the president and the vice president for praying for children who were just shot in church. That's what she's doing, as she pretends to cry. This is a new moment in American politics. This country was founded by Christians of European descent specifically. At no other point in our history would we openly mock a basic practice that's common not only in Catholicism, but in every faith. But that's what's happening now. The idea, of course, is not simply that prayer is useless, according to Jen Psaki. She's also implying that beyond prayer, there's nothing the Republicans are proposing. She's suggesting that we don't intend to actually do anything else. But she's wrong there. There's a lot of things we can do. We can classify transgenderism as a mental illness again. We can prevent gun stores from selling any firearms to somebody identifying as transgender. I mean, you want to talk about gun control when it comes to the trans terror threat? Well, okay. I mean, how about that? Is that what do you think about that compromise? We could reopen the asylums and we could put people there if they suffer from mental illness and delusions. We've also proposed that we should have armed security at every school. We should have armed security at churches. There's a lot of things that we've proposed. Of course, Jen Psaki wouldn't be happy with any of those steps. And that's why in that segment, she says that it's a false narrative to blame transgenderism for what happened. But really, treating transgenderism like a mental illness, which it is clearly the most practical way forward. It's very simple. But again, no one on the left seems to even consider this possibility. Instead, they spent the entire day mocking Christians one after another. It was completely relentless. This was a post from someone named Maxwell Alejandro Frost, for example. He apparently is a congressman in Florida. Quote, "These children were probably praying when they were shot to death at Catholic school. Don't give us your effing thoughts and prayers. Trump got rid of the Office of Gun Violence Prevention. Trump gutted the resources that were in place to keep our community safe." Oh, he gutted the Office of Gun Violence Prevention? Well, that's obviously why it happened. When gun violence happens now, it's obviously because people are saying, oh, well, the Office of Gun Violence Prevention doesn't exist. I guess we can go commit gun violence now. Well, tell me, Congressman, if that is what you really are. I've never heard of you. The Office of Gun Violence Prevention existed for how long exactly? I mean, I have no idea. I've never heard of it before. But for however long it existed, was gun violence happening when we had the Office of Gun Violence Prevention? Yeah, I think it was. But, they just can't help themselves. They hear about dead children, dead Christian children, and they can't bring themselves to utter an ounce of sympathy or concern or prayer. Instead, they deride the entire concept of prayer. If only we had the Office of Gun Violence Prevention. More bureaucracy. That would have solved the problem of psychopaths who become convinced that they were born in the wrong body. Former RNC chair Michael Steele agrees with that sentiment. He also decided to attack Christians yesterday. Watch.
I agree with the mayor. I'm not the thoughts and prayers. I'm so beyond that nonsense, the lie of that, because what we have are people who continue to stand in the way of actually doing something to stop the violence against their own kids. It is amazing to me. We watch young kids die in classrooms and now in church.
Prayer is nonsense, he says. He wouldn't say that in any other context, of course. He would never attack Muslims for praying. He doesn't want his studio to get blown up. But when he's talking about Christians, it just kind of rolls right off the tongue. A few days ago, you might remember that we talked about Jim Acosta's interview with the AI-generated version of a Parkland school shooting victim. The father behind that abomination popped up again yesterday, this time on CNN, and he too mocked the idea of prayer. Watch.
With us now is Manuel Oliver. Manuel's son, Joaquin Guac Oliver, was one of 17 who were killed in the shooting at Marjorie Stoneman Douglas High School in Parkland, Florida. And Manny, you and your wife Patricia just celebrated Guac's 25th birthday that would have happened here just a few weeks ago. You know all too well what these parents who have lost kids are going through. What is on your mind? What should we be keeping a focus on at this moment?
Well, my initial thought is that I believe that thoughts and prayers this time are out of the picture. I mean, these kids were actually praying, and all their thoughts were placed on the right God that we're all praying to, and still they were shot. And so far, I believe 2 of them lost their lives.
Those children were praying to God, and still they were shot. Checkmate. I mean, this is how these people think. It's like they're pulling a gotcha moment on dead kids. It's one of the most revealing moments in modern political history. We all knew these people thought like this, but it's still extraordinary to see them all admit it one by one. They don't simply misunderstand the concept of prayer. They're willing to gloat on national television when children are shot to death as they're praying. The same line was repeated on social media as well. Here's how one account with roughly 1 million followers put it. Quote, praying is the problem here, not the solution. People use prayer instead of action. If prayer worked, a house of prayer wouldn't have just experienced this tragedy. And it's almost difficult to read these posts out loud. They're the kinds of things you'd expect to hear from someone in a padded room. I mean, saying that, well, if prayer worked, then you wouldn't have violence. The fact that something evil is happening at a church, that proves that it doesn't work. The church isn't working. I mean, it's like saying that the fact that there are sick people at a hospital proves that hospitals don't work. Medicine doesn't work because they're sick. No, it's like it's because there are sick people that we have hospitals. It's because there's evil in the world that we have churches, that we need prayer. But this is the talking point of the Democrat Party. They refuse to acknowledge that action is indeed very much on the table. And that action will involve prayer, no matter how much contempt they have for the idea of religion and for prayer. But it involves a lot of other things. It also involves the eradication of the trans agenda in the United States. The time for affirming the delusions of men who think they're women and vice versa has come to an end. This grand experiment, which many people have participated in, many of them because they thought they were forced to, is over. Contrary to what the entire Democrat Party believes, this is a Christian nation. And in Christian nations, we believe in the power of prayer. We also believe in facing evil and confronting it and defeating it, so that no more children have to die in the service of an evil ideology. We are witnessing the last gasps of that ideology. The desperation is disguised as mockery, and just like the mockery, their ideology of death and mutilation will soon come to an end. If you'd like to see what else I have to say, you can access my full show by going to dailywire.com or by going to the Matt Walsh Show Twitter page. Hope to see you there. Godspeed.